The rain hammered against the windows of the Quartermain mansion as tension crackled through the living room like electricity. Every member of the family seemed to sense something enormous was about to happen. And at the center of it all sat General Hospital favorites, Brooklyn Quartermain and Harrison Chase, staring at a sealed envelope that had the power to change their lives forever. Brooklyn's hands trembled. Chase noticed immediately. "You don't have to open it if you're not ready," he said softly. But she shook her head. "No, we've come too far." The name written across the top of the envelope seemed to burn into her vision. Phoebe Ashton, DNA results. A child they barely knew. A child who had appeared in Port Charles under mysterious circumstances. A child whose very existence threatened to expose decades of secrets. And neither Chase nor Brook Lynn was prepared for what those results would reveal. Because the truth about Phoebe would send shockwaves through Port Charles unlike anything the Quartermains had faced in years. 2 weeks earlier, Brook Lynn had first become suspicious during a charity gala at the Metro Court. Phoebe had accidentally bumped into her while carrying a tray of sparkling cider for the younger guests. The little girl froze. Then she stared directly into Brook Lynn's eyes. "You look like me," Phoebe whispered. Brook Lynn laughed awkwardly at first, assuming the child was simply being sweet. But then something about Phoebe's expression unsettled her. It wasn't admiration. It was recognition. Later that evening, Chase found Brook Lynn distracted near the elevators. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I know this is crazy," she admitted, "but there's something familiar about that little girl." "Phoebe?" Brook Lynn nodded slowly. "The eyes, the dimples, even the way she talks." Chase brushed it off initially. Port Charles was full of coincidences. But then came the second strange moment. During dessert, Phoebe approached Lois and innocently asked if the Quartermains always fought so loudly. Lois nearly dropped her champagne glass. "How do you know we're Quartermains?" she asked carefully. Phoebe shrugged. "My mommy told me." "Who's your mommy?" But before Phoebe could answer, a mysterious blonde woman hurried across the ballroom and pulled the girl away. And from that moment on, Brook Lynn couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Days later, the mystery deepened. Chase returned home from work carrying an old case file. "You remember that woman at the gala?" he asked. "The blonde?" "Yeah, I ran facial recognition through PCPD databases." Brook Lynn's eyes widened. "You did what?" She looked familiar. "And?" Chase exhaled heavily. "Her name is Amelia Ashton." Brook Lynn frowned. "That doesn't mean anything to me." "It should." He handed her a photograph. Brook Lynn gasped instantly, because standing beside Amelia in the old picture was none other than Dante Falconeri, and in the background, a younger Brook Lynn. "This was from camp," Brook Lynn whispered. "Years ago." Chase nodded grimly. Amelia disappeared from Port Charles almost 20 years ago. Brook Lynn stared at the image. Why would she come back now? But Chase already feared he knew the answer, and he wasn't sure Brook Lynn could handle it. The next morning, Brook Lynn confronted Lois in the kitchen. "Mom, who is Amelia Ashton?" Lois froze so completely that even Gloria noticed. "That name hasn't been spoken in this house for years," Lois said carefully. "Why?" But Lois hesitated, and that hesitation told Brook Lynn everything. "You know something." "Brook Lynn, no, don't do that thing where you protect me by lying." Lois closed her eyes. "Amelia was your friend when you were younger." "That's it?" "No." Brook Lynn's pulse quickened. "What aren't you telling me?" Lois finally whispered the words Brook Lynn never expected to hear. "Amelia was pregnant when she left Port Charles." Silence filled the kitchen. Brook Lynn stared at her mother in disbelief. "What does that have to do with me?" Lois looked devastated. She claimed the baby belonged to someone connected to this family. Brook Lynn's stomach dropped. "No!" She refused to name the father. Suddenly, Chase entered the room, having overheard everything, and the look on his face terrified Brook Lynn, because he had already started connecting the dots. Later that night, Chase visited Anna Devane at the PCPD. "I need a favor," he said. Anna crossed her arms. The last time you said that, I ended up chasing smugglers through Canada. This is different. He handed her Phoebe's school registration records. Anna examined them carefully. You think this child is connected to the Quartermains? I think someone's hiding something. Anna studied him closely. And what exactly are you afraid of? Chase hesitated. That Brooklyn's entire past is about to explode. Anna's expression softened. You love her. More than anything. Then be careful. Some truths destroy people. But Chase had already made up his mind. He needed answers, no matter how painful they might be. Meanwhile, Brooklyn secretly met with Amelia at a quiet cafe near the docks. The moment Amelia arrived, Brooklyn noticed the fear in her eyes. You shouldn't have contacted me, Amelia whispered. Who is Phoebe? Amelia's hands shook. She's my daughter. And why does she look so much like me? Amelia looked away. Some things are better left buried. Brooklyn slammed her hand on the table. No more riddles. Several customers turned toward them. Brooklyn lowered her voice, but not her fury. You came back to Port Charles for a reason. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted this. Wanted what? For Phoebe to know the truth. Brooklyn's breath caught. What truth? But before Amelia could answer, a black SUV screeched outside the cafe. Amelia turned pale instantly. They found me. Who found you? You need to protect Phoebe. Then Amelia bolted out the back exit, leaving Brooklyn stunned and terrified. That same evening, Phoebe vanished. Amelia disappeared, and panic erupted across Port Charles. Chase coordinated the search personally. Roadblocks were established, phones were traced, security footage was reviewed, but there was no sign of either mother or daughter. Brooklyn felt herself unraveling. This is my fault, she whispered. No, Chase insisted. Whoever took them planned this. But then Dante arrived with horrifying news. A vehicle matching Amelia's SUV had been spotted near Pier 55, abandoned, with blood inside. Brooklyn nearly collapsed. Hours later, Phoebe was found wandering alone near the waterfront, cold, terrified, and clutching a necklace. Brooklyn immediately recognized it, because it belonged to her grandmother. How did you get this? Brooklyn asked gently. Phoebe looked confused. My mommy gave it to me. Why? She said it belonged to my real family. Brooklyn felt Chase tense beside her. What did your mother mean by that? He asked carefully. Phoebe's voice trembled. She said if something happened, I should find Brooklyn. The room fell silent, and that was the moment Chase realized the situation was far worse than they imagined. Amelia resurfaced 2 days later at General Hospital, barely conscious, and desperate to speak before it was too late. I need to tell Brooklyn the truth, she gasped. Doctors rushed to stabilize her while Chase called Brooklyn immediately. When Brooklyn arrived, Amelia looked terrified. They know I talked, she whispered weakly. Who? But Amelia ignored the question. Instead, she grabbed Brooklyn's hand tightly. Phoebe deserves the truth. Brooklyn's heart pounded violently. What truth? Amelia struggled to speak, then finally said the words that shattered everything. Phoebe is connected to you. Brooklyn's knees nearly gave out. How? Amelia began crying. Because Phoebe's biological father was a Quartermain. The revelation exploded across Port Charles within hours. Naturally, the Quartermain mansion became total chaos. Tracy Quartermain demanded answers. Ned Quartermain accused Amelia of manipulating the family. Lois defended Brooklyn fiercely, and Chase tried desperately to keep everyone calm. But one question consumed everyone. Who was Phoebe's father? The possibilities were horrifying, and the timing made things even worse. Because if Phoebe truly carried Quartermain blood, then someone had hidden her existence for years. Brooklyn couldn't sleep. She sat alone in the nursery she and Chase had once dreamed of filling with children. Now all she could think about was Phoebe. The little girl's smile, her familiar laugh, her unmistakable resemblance to the Quartermains. Chase entered quietly. You okay? No, He sat beside her. You think Phoebe could actually be family? Lynn swallowed hard. I don't know what to think anymore. Then Chase revealed something he had hidden. I submitted DNA samples. Lynn stared at him. You what? I needed answers. You went behind my back? I was trying to protect you. Lynn stood angrily. No, you were trying to control the situation. Because you're emotionally involved. And you think I'm not capable of handling the truth? That's not what I said. But it's what you meant. Tears filled Lynn's eyes. I trusted you. Chase looked devastated. But before he could respond, his phone buzzed. The DNA results were ready. Now they sat together in the Quartermain living room, the envelope between them, their future hanging by a thread. Lois paced nervously. Ned stood near the fireplace. Tracy watched everyone like a hawk. Even Dante had arrived, sensing disaster. Lynn slowly opened the envelope. Her hands shook violently as she read the report. At first, confusion crossed her face. Then, absolute shock. Chase grabbed the paper, and suddenly his entire expression changed. No. Lois panicked. What is it? Lynn looked physically ill. That's impossible. Tracy snatched the results. And for the first time in years, the mighty Tracy Quartermain was speechless. Because according to the DNA report, Phoebe was not just connected to the Quartermains. She was a 99.9% genetic match to Lynn herself. The room exploded into chaos. What does that mean? Ned demanded. Chase looked pale. It means... Lynn whispered the answer before he could. Phoebe is my daughter. Silence crashed over the mansion. No one breathed, no one moved. And Lynn felt her entire world collapse around her. That can't be true, Lynn whispered repeatedly. But the evidence was undeniable. The DNA results confirmed a biological mother-child relationship. Phoebe was hers, somehow, some way. And Lynn had absolutely no memory of ever giving birth. This has to be a mistake, Chase insisted. But Tracy shook her head grimly. DNA doesn't lie. Lynn suddenly remembered something. Years ago, a blackout period during a music tour, a hospitalization after collapsing overseas, doctors claiming she suffered severe complications from exhaustion. Her face drained of color. Oh my God. Chase grabbed her shoulders. What? Lynn looked utterly shattered. There was a time I lost several weeks. Everyone stared at her. I thought it was stress. Lois looked terrified. Lynn. I woke up in a clinic in Europe. They said I'd been dehydrated and disoriented. Chase's voice hardened. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I barely remembered it. Then another horrifying realization hit her. Someone stole my child. At General Hospital, Amelia finally revealed the entire story. Years earlier, Lynn had unknowingly become involved with a secret fertility research program tied to a corrupt medical network. After Lynn collapsed overseas, doctors discovered she was pregnant, but powerful people saw opportunity. The child carried Quartermain DNA, valuable DNA. Amelia had worked at the clinic as a nurse, and when she discovered the organization planned to sell the baby to wealthy buyers using falsified records, she panicked, so she took the infant and fled. She saved Phoebe, Chase realized. Amelia nodded tearfully. I couldn't let them traffic a child. Lynn sobbed uncontrollably. All these years. I wanted to come back sooner, Amelia whispered, but they threatened to kill us. And now, they found us. Suddenly, Anna burst into the room. We have a problem. Everyone turned. The clinic wasn't acting alone. Meaning, Anna's expression darkened. Someone in Port Charles helped cover this up. Suspicion immediately spread through the Quartermains. Had someone inside the family known? Was this about inheritance, power, control? Ned accused Tracy. Tracy accused Valentin. Dante suspected old WSB connections. Meanwhile, Lynn focused only on Phoebe. The little girl sat quietly in the hospital room coloring pictures. completely unaware that her life had changed forever. Brooklyn approached slowly. Phoebe looked up nervously. "Am I in trouble?" Brooklyn immediately broke down crying. "No, sweetheart." Phoebe tilted her head. "Then why are you sad?" Brooklyn knelt before her. "Because I missed so much time with you." Phoebe smiled softly. "You're nice like my mommy said." Brooklyn hugged her tightly. And in that moment, Chase realized something profound. Brooklyn had already become Phoebe's mother in every way that mattered, even before the DNA test. But the nightmare was only beginning, because the mysterious organization wanted Phoebe back, and they were willing to kill to protect their secrets. That night, the hospital lost power, security systems failed, and a masked intruder entered Phoebe's room. Luckily, Chase arrived seconds before disaster struck. A violent fight erupted, glass shattered, monitors crashed, and the attacker escaped through a stairwell after whispering one chilling warning: "You have no idea who Phoebe really is." Those words haunted Chase, because something still didn't add up. Why would criminals go to such extremes over one little girl? Unless Phoebe represented something even bigger. Anna and Dante dug deeper into the clinic's records. What they uncovered horrified them. Phoebe wasn't the only child involved. Several wealthy families around the world had secretly paid enormous sums for genetically desirable children. Quartermain DNA had been specifically targeted because of its medical history and inheritance potential. "This is human trafficking," Dante said angrily. Anna nodded grimly. "And someone powerful protected it." Then they discovered a familiar name buried in encrypted files: a Cassadine Shell Corporation, which meant the conspiracy reached farther than anyone imagined. Meanwhile, Brooklyn struggled emotionally. "How could this happen?" she cried to Chase one night. He held her close. "You didn't do anything wrong." "But I lost her." "You didn't lose her. Someone stole her." Brooklyn looked at Phoebe sleeping nearby. She spent years believing another woman was her mother. Amelia loved her. I know. That truth complicated everything. Because Amelia wasn't a villain, she was a protector, a survivor. And despite everything, Brooklyn found herself grateful. "If Amelia hadn't saved Phoebe," Brooklyn whispered. Chase finished the sentence quietly. "She might never have survived." The emotional turning point came when Phoebe finally learned the truth. Brooklyn sat beside her carefully. "There's something important we need to tell you." Phoebe looked nervous. "Is my mommy okay?" "She loves you very much. But..." Brooklyn's eyes filled with tears. "I'm your biological mother." Phoebe blinked repeatedly, then asked the heartbreaking question, "Did you not want me?" Brooklyn immediately broke. "Oh, sweetheart, no." She hugged Phoebe tightly. "I would have searched the entire world for you if I'd known." Phoebe started crying too. "Then why weren't you there?" Brooklyn couldn't answer, because no explanation could ever erase those lost years. Later, Chase found Brooklyn alone on the hospital roof. "You're blaming yourself again." She deserved better. Chase took her hands gently. "Look at what you're doing right now." "What?" "You're fighting for her." Brooklyn leaned against him, emotionally exhausted. "I'm scared." "So am I." "What if I fail her?" Chase smiled softly. "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because I've never seen anyone love this fiercely." Brooklyn cried against his chest, and for the first time since the nightmare began, she allowed herself to believe they might survive this, together. But Port Charles was far from safe, because the conspiracy still had one final secret, and that secret would stun everyone. Anna eventually uncovered the mastermind behind the operation. Not a Cassadine, not a stranger, but a respected Port Charles doctor everyone trusted, someone who had quietly manipulated medical records for decades. The revelation rocked General Hospital to its core, and before the authorities could arrest him, he kidnapped Phoebe. Again. The final showdown took place at an abandoned research facility outside Port Charles. Chase, Dante, Anna, and Brooklyn raced against time. Inside, The doctor prepared to flee the country with Phoebe. "You don't understand," he shouted when confronted. "She's worth millions." "She's a child," Brooklyn screamed. The doctor laughed bitterly. "No, she's a genetic gold mine." Phoebe cried for Brooklyn desperately, and something inside Brooklyn snapped. Years of guilt, fear, pain, loss, all exploded at once. She lunged at the doctor without hesitation. The struggle turned violent. Equipment crashed, alarms blared, and ultimately Chase subdued the man just before he could escape. Phoebe ran directly into Brooklyn's arms. "Mama!" That single word shattered everyone emotionally, especially Brooklyn, because after everything, Phoebe had finally accepted her. Weeks later, calm slowly returned to Port Charles. The conspiracy was exposed, arrests were made. Amelia entered witness protection, and Phoebe officially moved into the Quartermain mansion. Naturally, chaos followed immediately. Tracy pretended to hate the noise, but secretly adored Phoebe. Lois spoiled her constantly. Ned struggled to process everything. And Chase found himself unexpectedly loving family life. One evening, he watched Lynn helping Phoebe with homework. They laughed together naturally, comfortably, like they had always belonged together. Lynn looked up and caught Chase smiling. "What?" "You're incredible." She laughed softly. "I'm terrified every day." "That's called being a parent." Phoebe grinned. "You two are weird." Chase laughed. "Yeah, probably." Then Lynn grew emotional. "I still can't believe she's really here." Chase wrapped an arm around both of them. "She's home." And after years of stolen memories, hidden truths, and devastating loss, Lynn finally understood something. Family wasn't only about blood. It was about fighting for each other, protecting each other, choosing each other. And no DNA test in the world could ever fully measure that kind of love. But one thing was certain in Port Charles. The shocking truth about Phoebe had changed everything forever. And the fallout was only beginning.